My daughter sold their house for $500,000 and gave every dollar to my son-in-law to invest in what he called a digital business. 2 weeks later, they showed up at my door asking for a place to stay. I said no. That same day, my son-in-law punched me in the face. My name is Bruce. I'm 62 years old. I spent my entire life running a mechanical company. I understand how gears work. If you don't maintain them, they rust. If you push them too hard, they break. But I never imagined that my own blood would be the thing that shattered the entire machine of my life. I'm standing in front of the bathroom mirror. Blood from my nose drips into the spotless white sink, drop by drop, slowly. Dark red. My nose throbs like someone just hammered a nail into it. But that pain is nothing compared to the cold spreading through my chest. It all started 2 weeks ago. Leah, my only daughter, showed up at my door with Henry. They looked miserable. Wrinkled clothes, dark circles under their eyes. Leah broke down crying and told me they had lost everything. $500,000, the money from selling their only home. Every cent had vanished into a digital business Henry dreamed up. Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a snack, get comfortable. And remember this, the people in these stories had every chance to do the right thing, they simply chose not to. Leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. You're going to enjoy it here. I looked out the window. Henry was still standing there right on my front porch. He didn't look remorseful at all. He stood straight, calmly adjusting the collar of his expensive shirt, the kind of shirt he bought with my daughter's money. The way he looked at me wasn't the look of a son-in-law begging for help. It was the look of a hunter staring at an aging piece of prey. Leah stood beside him. She didn't rush over to help me up. She didn't scream when her husband swung his fist. She just stood there trembling, staring down at her feet. That silence hurt more than the punch. I remembered Leah from 20 years ago. The little girl who was so afraid of thunder that she had to crawl into her father's arms to fall asleep. Now she was standing beside the lightning bolt that had just struck me in the face. I worked 14 hours a day so Leah would never have to go without. I paid for her college tuition. I gave her a large sum of money as a wedding gift. And this is how they repay me. They want to move into my house. They want me to bankroll their failure. When I told them I wouldn't support Henry's laziness and stupidity, he exploded. He called me a selfish old man. He said I was sitting on a pile of gold while letting my own child starve. And then boom. The punch came so fast I didn't even have time to react. I fell onto the grass. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. Henry leaned down close to my ear, his breath smelling of expensive cigarettes. He whispered, "This is only the beginning, old man." Leah stayed silent. She turned her face away as Henry pulled her toward the car. The luxury vehicle sped off, leaving me alone on the ground. I stood up, wiped the blood from my face, and picked up my broken glasses. He thinks I'm an easy target. He thinks I'm just a retired old man holding a checkbook. What he doesn't know is that I spent 40 years surviving in the ruthless world of business. He just made the biggest mistake of his life. He just declared war on a man who has nothing left to lose except his honor. I walked back into the house and picked up the phone. The pain in my face slowly turned into a strange kind of calm. This is no longer a family dispute. This is a war, and I'm going to be the one who writes the ending. The next morning, I didn't go to the police station. The police would only see this as a minor family scuffle. They'd issue a warning. Henry would play the role of the provoked victim, and then he'd come back. I didn't want a warning. I wanted a permanent ending. I drove downtown. The light drizzle made the wound on my face sting. I stepped into an old brick building. This was Robert's office. He was a litigation attorney, retired now, but he still kept a few special cases on the side. We had known each other for 30 years. Robert saw the bruises on my face. He didn't ask a single question. He simply poured a glass of whiskey and slid it across the desk toward me. Robert sat down across from me. He opened a light blue case file. There was a look of concern in his eyes. He looked straight at me, his voice lowering. "There are things about Henry you need to know. Things I should have told you months ago." Something in his tone made my blood run cold. He pushed an old photograph across the desk. In the picture was Henry, but he looked younger. He was standing beside an older woman at a golf course in Florida. She was smiling brightly. He was smiling too. But the smile never reached his eyes. Robert said, "This is Margaret Davidson. She lost her house and her entire retirement fund to a man named Harold Rickman. That's your son-in-law's real name." My heart skipped a beat. The name Henry was just a mask. Harold Rickman. A name that carried the stench of fraud. Robert flipped through more pages in the file. He served 2 years in prison in Ohio. Robert continued. The charges were financial fraud and asset theft. He has a pattern. He targets single women or families with substantial assets who are going through unstable periods. He uses a polished appearance to gain access. He uses business jargon to impress them. And in the end, he bleeds them dry. Stay with my story until the very end, and leave a comment with the name of the city you're watching from so I can see just how far this story has traveled. I felt a wave of nausea rising in my stomach. My daughter wasn't his wife. She was his target. She was the key he used to unlock the door to my safe. He had spent years brainwashing Leah. He made her believe that I was the obstacle standing in the way of their success. He isolated her from anyone who might have seen through him. Robert pointed to another report. He's not just being watched by the FBI, he said. He's also drowning in massive debts in Las Vegas. Leah's $500,000 had never been invested in any business. It had been thrown onto gambling tables and into loan shark debts. He was being cornered, and a con man backed into a corner becomes extremely dangerous. I looked again at the photograph of Margaret Davidson. Robert added quietly, "She died in a rundown nursing home 6 months later. Cause of death, emotional collapse, and lack of proper medical care. Harold took everything, and he left her to die alone." I tightened my grip on the glass in my hand. The pain in my face had turned into a burning rage. He thought he could do the same thing to me. He thought I was just another Margaret, a wealthy, lonely old man waiting to be carved apart. But he was wrong. He forgot where I came from. I started in a dirty machine shop. I've faced the most ruthless competitors in business, and I've never lost a fight when it came to protecting what's mine. Robert looked at me with concern. "Bruce," he said, "he knows about your assets. He knows about your old will. You need to be careful. Men like Harold don't stop at theft. They try to legalize the theft, at any cost." I stood up. I thanked Robert and walked out of the office. It was still raining outside, but my mind had never been clearer. I knew exactly what I had to do. I wouldn't just defend myself. I would set a trap he would never see coming. He wanted to play the game of predators. I would show him what a real hunter looks like. I drove back home. The large house suddenly felt strange and unfamiliar. I knew Henry and Leah might be somewhere nearby. They might even be watching me. I walked inside, turned on the lights, and sat down at my desk. I opened my computer. My investigation was just beginning, and my revenge would not be warm. It would be cold as steel. It would be precise like a diamond cut. Harold Rickman, welcome to your own personal hell. I returned home. The house was eerily quiet. I started checking the drawers and cabinets, tax files, property ownership documents. Everything was still there. But when I opened the secret drawer beneath my desk, my heart nearly stopped. The investment file had been disturbed. Blank sheets of paper had been slipped between some of the most important documents. Henry had been here. He wasn't just looking for cash. He was searching for something much bigger. I called Robert late that night. He sent a document analysis specialist to meet with me. We sat down and examined every signature. The property transfer document for this house. A petition for legal guardianship over an incapacitated person. Even falsified medical records. They claimed I was showing early signs of dementia. Every single document carried my signature, but I had never signed any of them. They were perfect forgeries. Henry had spent months practicing my handwriting. Based on the questions he'd been asking about inheritance law, Robert looked at me and said quietly, "I believe Henry's final target isn't just Leah's assets. It's yours. He's building a legal case to take control of everything." I looked at Robert. Then I said it out loud, flat and cold. "He's planning to kill me." If you've followed the story all the way to this point, do us a quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without doing it, but it costs you nothing and it means a great deal to us. A cold feeling began crawling up my spine. I walked into the kitchen. I stared at the bottles of supplements I had been taking every morning. Leah had bought them for me. She said they were vitamins for older people. I took a few of the pills and slipped them into a small bag. The next morning I brought them to a private laboratory. When the results came back, I was stunned. Those vitamins didn't just contain nutrients. They contained a large amount of lorazepam, a powerful sedative. Taken over time, it can cause confusion and memory loss. In higher doses, it can even cause respiratory failure. Henry didn't just want my money. He wanted me to disappear quietly. He wanted Leah to become the sole heir, completely under his control. I sat in the darkness of the living room. My hands trembled with rage and horror. Henry had been poisoning me. And Leah, my daughter, did she know about this? Was she watching her father drink those death pills every day and smiling? That thought hurt more than any punch. I looked at the old family photos hanging on the wall. The little girl I once loved more than my own life. Now she might be waiting for my death. But Henry had made a mistake. He thought he was dealing with a helpless victim. He had no idea that I had already seen through his game. From now on, every pill I take will be switched out. Every step he makes will be recorded by the hidden cameras I just installed. I'll let him continue his little performance for a while longer. I need him confident. I need him to believe that his plan is working perfectly. Because when a hunter believes he has cornered his prey, that's when he's most vulnerable. I'm not just an aging businessman. I'm a betrayed father. And a betrayed father is the most dangerous creature on this earth. He wants my blood. He wants my wealth. But what he's going to receive is a sentence with no escape. That night I lay awake. Then I heard a soft noise at the back door, footsteps moving quietly in the kitchen, the sound of the medicine cabinet opening. I held my breath and gripped my phone tightly in my hand. I knew he was there. He was checking to see if the old man had taken his pills. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. My heart pounded against my chest. This battle had officially entered its bloodiest phase. And now, there was no turning back for anyone. That afternoon, I sat on the old wooden chair on the front porch. The late sunlight stretched across the yard in a pale yellow glow. Leah walked toward me. She was holding a warm cup of tea. That was how she always showed her pretend concern. Looking at her, I felt a sharp pain tighten in my chest. This was the person I once carried in my arms. This was the child I had sworn to protect at all costs. But the woman standing in front of me now felt like a stranger. I placed the bottle of lorazepam on the table. Next to it, the file of forged signatures. Leah froze. The cup of tea in her hands began to tremble. I looked straight into my daughter's eyes. Leah, do you know what Henry is doing? Do you know he's trying to kill your father? My voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. Leah started to cry. But it wasn't the cry of remorse. It was the cry of blind defiance. She said I had become paranoid. She said I had always tried to destroy her happiness. She accused me of being a controlling father, someone who used money to manipulate everyone. She said Henry was the only person who ever saw her true value. If I have to choose between you and Henry, I choose Henry, she said. He's my family now. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit the like button and subscribe. About 97% of viewers never do, but it's what keeps this entire channel going. Those words felt like a fatal knife strike. They severed the last thread of family bond that still remained. I looked at the daughter I had sacrificed everything to raise. Now she was willing to step over her father's body, to follow a con man. Silence filled the air. Only the sound of wind moving through the dry leaves remained. I stood up and walked into my study. I took out a new sheet of paper. It was the will I had drafted with my lawyer, Robert. I handed it to Leah. If you've chosen him, I said quietly, then let him take care of you. Every last dollar of my estate will be donated to the American Cancer Society. You will receive nothing. Not even this house. Leah's face changed instantly. The sadness disappeared. In its place came panic. She began to scream. She called me cruel. She called me a heartless old monster. At that moment, Henry stepped out of the shadows. The charming mask was gone. His eyes were burning with rage. He moved toward me, fists clenched. He thought intimidation would make me change my mind. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I looked straight at Harold Rickman. "I've already sent a copy of this will," I said calmly, "along with evidence of those poisoned pills to my lawyer. If anything happens to me, the police will have everything they need." Henry's arm froze midair. In that moment he realized the game had changed. He was no longer the hunter. He was standing inside a trap he couldn't escape. Leah looked at Henry. Then she looked back at me. For a moment she looked like a lost child. But I didn't reach out to save her again. I had learned something painful. Sometimes helping someone is the same as enabling their crime. I turned around and walked back into the house. I locked the door, leaving their pounding and curses outside in the dark. That night I sat alone in the library, staring into the empty space ahead of me. My heart was shattered, but my mind had never been clearer. I had lost my daughter, but I had found myself again. I would not let them destroy the final years of my life. The legal battle was about to begin, and I was ready for the last chapter of my story. Betrayal may knock you down, but truth will make you stronger than ever. The next morning, my world changed completely. Henry no longer kept that eerie silence. He launched a dirty attack campaign. He used social media to spread lies. He said I was losing my mind. He claimed I was being abused and urgently needed a legal guardian. He even dragged Emma, my granddaughter, into it. He told her that her grandfather had gone insane and was throwing her mother out onto the street. I saw my name being smeared across community groups online. Neighbors began looking at me with pitying eyes. A few old friends started calling, their voices filled with doubt. Henry thought public pressure would make me collapse. He believed reputation was the weakest point of an aging businessman. He thought I would surrender just to save face. Henry believed he was dealing with a confused old man he could manipulate. What he didn't realize was that he had just declared war on someone who spent 40 years building a successful business by outthinking men exactly like him. But I wasn't going to sit quietly and play the victim. He used social media. I used truth and real power. I went to the office of the local newspaper. The editor was someone I had helped many years ago. I handed him Robert's file, the photographs of Margaret Davidson, one of Harold's victims, a copy of Harold Rickman's criminal record in Ohio, and the lab report proving there was poison in my vitamins. At the same time, I began cutting off every financial lifeline. I revoked access to the secondary credit cards I had given Leah. I asked the bank to freeze our joint accounts. Henry's cash flow was suddenly cut off. And what does a parasite do when the host stops providing blood? It panics, and it starts making mistakes. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit the like button and subscribe. About 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this entire channel alive. Henry began losing control. He showed up outside my former company and started causing a scene. He shouted that I had stolen money from my own daughter. What he didn't know was that every second of it was being recorded by security cameras, and every recording was sent directly to the prosecutor's office. I didn't argue with him online. I let the truth speak through official channels. The day the newspaper came out, the headline read, "Portrait of a con artist disguised as a businessman." The whole town was shocked. Every lie Henry had told was dragged into the light. He was no longer the poor husband he pretended to be. He became a predator, exposed someone the entire community now despised. His creditors from Las Vegas began showing up. He had nowhere left to hide. Leah called me in a panic. She was crying, saying Henry was out of control, smashing things around the house. She begged me to give him some money so he could leave. I answered with one sentence: "You chose him as your family, then face the consequences with him." And I hung up. My chest ached with pain, but my hands did not tremble. My counterattack was never about winning. It was about protecting what remained of justice. Henry had underestimated a father. He thought love was a weakness. He didn't understand that when love is betrayed, it can transform into a terrifying force of reckoning. The legal net was closing in. The arrest warrant had been approved. Harold Rickman was about to return to the place he truly belonged. And me, I was simply waiting for justice to do its work. The day Henry was arrested, there were no gunshots or dramatic chases. Just the dry click of handcuffs in front of a cheap hotel. He had been planning to run to Las Vegas with the last bit of cash he stole from Leah's wallet. He left my daughter behind in an empty room and a mountain of debt. The arrest warrant listed multiple charges: document forgery, financial fraud, and attempted harm to another person's health. 3 months later, a handwritten letter arrived at my house. It came from a women's shelter in another state. It was from Leah. She wrote about her regret. She described how Henry had mentally abused her once the money ran out. She apologized for not believing me. She begged for a chance to come home. I stood in my garden, holding the letter in my hands. Morning sunlight filtered through the leaves. I looked at the scars on my hands from my years working in the machine shop. I touched the place on my face where the bruise had long since faded. I didn't write back. I didn't pick up the phone. Not because I still carried hatred, but because I had learned something important. Forgiveness does not mean allowing someone to come back and destroy your life again. Leah needed to learn how to stand on her own feet. She needed to understand the cost of betrayal and blindness. If I opened my door right now, I would only be feeding the same weakness that led her here. I had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's self-destruction, even when that person is your own child. Join our community by hitting like and subscribe to hear more raw, real stories about family and life's toughest lessons. And as always, thank you for being part of this space. I spend my time taking care of the garden. I prune the dry, dying branches. I pull out the weeds that choke the life out of the flowers. Life is a lot like a garden. You can't keep everything. Sometimes you have to cut away the most painful parts so the whole body can survive. Peace eventually returned. It was a late and bitter peace, but it was real peace. I am no longer anyone's bank, and I'm no longer anyone's victim. I'm just Bruce, a man who protected his honor until the very end. To the fathers and mothers listening to this story, don't let love blind you to the truth. Family is sacred, but respect is the foundation. If someone doesn't respect your life, they don't deserve a place in it, no matter what blood runs through their veins. Be strong enough to draw boundaries, because that is the only way to protect yourself and the people you truly love. Thank you for listening to my journey. Live a life worthy of yourself, and never let anyone extinguish the fire inside you.